that. But there's another question that I want to start with that's occurred to me that's more important. That we come from Europe.
Yeah.
And European Judaism had the oppression of the non-Jewish community trying to kill us off.
Mm-hmm.
So
that goes even for the Sephardim in Morocco.
It goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a history of thousands of years of terrible oppression.
Yeah.
We come here to this country and we shed Judaism because we've associated Judaism with oppression. And then we have a whole bunch of Jews who want to come back, and the lineage of being connected to God is broken, and the transmission that came through that is broken. So I'm concerned with we had people really connected to God, even though there was oppression.
Yeah.
And now we have a desert of people not connected to God who want to be connected to God.
Yeah.
Or at least they want to observe Judaism. So as I see it, Judaism has to undergo a positive transformation, which you've done with Jewish Renewal. But how to connect people?
So here's my response to this. It turns out that the whole thing about Jewish renewal came about with the understanding of the paradigm shift. Because what you are saying is really the old paradigm. The old paradigm, like people would say, what do we celebrate? The Goyim had it in for us. We won, now we eat. That's how they talk about it.
Right.
But the new paradigm, something has happened. We have moved away from the triumphalism. Why? What's troubling us with the radical Islam and with even with the Neturei Karta and with Christianity that is the right-wing Christianity is simply that one thing that they say, in the end we will win and everybody will have to be either us or they go to hell. Okay? Now, if I were to say I shift that and I go to an organic connection, then all of us are organically connected. It's a whole different ball game.
But for most people, they're connected and they don't know it.
Well, some of it, when you're organic, some of it is more conscious, some of it is less conscious. For instance, my marrow has a consciousness. It produces red blood cells and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it doesn't have the same consciousness that my mind, my brain has. And so I have to understand that if we were not connected, not everything has to be with verbal connection.
It has to be with awareness, though.
Some of it is with awareness, some of it is not. If I were to look at the bell-shaped curve, I would say how much, if I were to take all of me and then do a scatter, I would see that the aware stuff is only 2 sigma plus that little bit, and the rest of it is unaware. And so it is with every community, that there are some people who are not aware. What's important is for those people who are going to be watching this series to stay in their awareness, because that'll infect the rest.
Yeah, well, maybe it will infect the rest. What I'm concerned about is that awareness of God has to be brought in. And doing the rituals alone does not guarantee that.
Yeah, that's true. So in order to bring about awareness of God, it's the same situation. Some people will do the ritual only. Some people will say, I can be aware of God without ritual. But it's the people who will do ritual with awareness who will influence both sides.
My concern is that with this paradigm shift, the break from old school Judaism, European Judaism, Sephardic Judaism, we have a break in the continuity of the mental gestalt, the consciousness gestalt that connects us. And how can that be reestablished?
The wonderful thing that I observe, now you are taking the role of the pessimist and I'm taking the role of the optimist here. That's all right.
In reality, I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
But
for the sake of this conversation.
Yeah.
So when I start looking at what has happened in the publication of Jewish media at this point, then never in history has been such an uprush of this material.
True.
Now I get a call, an email from somebody who is reading the work of Maimonides' son, and
Avram.
of Avram, and is aware that he differs from his father, and he asks me whether this word ma'avak is shows in Arabic as jihad. Now this is a yeshiva bacher who is on to that. And when I see more and more material coming in, more and more people becoming aware, it's always the avant-garde that is in disrepute.
True.
And so there are now some people in New York who have been refugees from Brooklyn and so on and so forth, and they're in disrepute, but out of that soil will grow that which you're saying.
Hopefully, yeah, that would be good.
There were a couple of other things on our list.
The list is right here. To scrutinize the motives under the moral microscope for authenticity, honesty, and how they fit one's understanding of reality and one's awareness of God.
See, here is something again that is so amazing to me. There's a man by the name of Alan Morinis who has been traveling across the country. He has been infected by Mussar, and he is speaking to people about Mussar. And Mussar shows itself in Torah and Avodah and Gmilut Chasadim. It shows itself, first of all, in Gmilut Chasadim, because how do we give our tzedakah, and are we giving it with the right motives? And he brings that in. When it comes to prayer, the question is always authenticity. How much are you doing to show up, to show off? How much are you doing in order to be socially acceptable by the people? But he is asking the question, are you aware that you're praying, that you're standing in the presence of God? That's an important. Also in the study of Torah, Mussar is saying, there was a story of one of the Rebbes who was, before he started to learn, every time he would say the sentence, Ulerosha Omer Elokim Malacho Lesaper Chukai. To the wicked one, God said, what business have you got to speak of my law? Which was his way of saying, so let me do tshuva before I study, so I be in your presence as I'm studying your mind, your wisdom, and your will.
Right.
And I think that's happening too, little by little, but at the same time, the old institutions are breaking down.
True. Well, what comes to me here is that many people, many Jews, have an accounting system.
Have what?
An accounting system.
Yeah.
So the mitzvahs are done. I'm chalking up points, so I will get into the world to come.
That is what Manny Rachman has so beautifully put out when he said that people are trying to be Yotzi Yedei Chovato, to extricate themselves from the grasp of obligation. I've done it, I've deposited my stuff in heaven, and now I'm free. But that's where Hasidus and the new Hasidism that we are doing of the fourth turning is now asking, but does it transform you? And that has been your question all along.
Yeah. Does it transform you? What does it do to you internally and in your life?
Yeah.
So the way I see it, it has to be done with the right motive and the right attitude.
So now the question is, how do we infuse that into people? Because
Right.
that's not the easy thing. There is this wonderful teaching that goes about, the Baal Shem Tov, I think, put this out first, about Moses at the burning bush, where God says, take the shoes off your feet, you're standing on holy ground.
Right.
So, in Hasidic parlance, take the shoes off your feet comes take the lock off your habits.
Mm-hmm.
Na'al is lock and regel is habit, yeah? And take the, and only when when you're not in the track of the habitual can you be in the here and now, and can you be in the presence of the living God.
Okay, so this presents a conflict. This is the right way to daven, and you should do it at these times, and you have to have the right attitudes, but you have to take the lock off as well.
I was talking with a young Baal Tshuva who was telling me that I asked him, what's your prayer life like? He says he's doing it all according to the Siddur, but the most important part comes to him when he's doing Hitbodedut, that he speaks to God in English direct.
Right.
Okay, that's wonderful. So he got that from Reb Nachman.
Right.
So I pointed something out to him, that when he's davening from the Siddur, he's fulfilling a rabbinic command. But when he is davening his Bodedut, in other words, asking God for what he needs, he's doing a scriptural command. And then I told him that my Rebbe's father, Reb Shalom Dov Ber, pointed out that if you daven the regular daven in the Siddur, because it touches you, you care about that. You say, Berachmecha Rabbi Merachem Aleinu, please have pity on me, Rebbeinu Shalom, help me, lead me in the right way. Then the rabbinic prayer of the Siddur becomes scriptural prayer, because you mean it, and that's called Adat de Nafsha, to pray with self-involvement in that touches me.
So it seems that what's important here is to strive for a relationship with God. That needs to be paramount.
Well, how do you speak about relationship with God? You call it the covenant. So most people don't pay attention to the word covenant anymore, to speak about that this is a relationship that has to be vital and not to be broken and so on.
And renewed constantly.
Of course. Asher anochi mitzavcha hayom, that every day is as fresh and new, and it has to be reaffirmed.
From my experience, to appeal to God, to say, this is what I need, God's more than willing to do that.
Right, but it also is necessary to be able to say, not only this is what I need like a kvetch, but to be able to say, I am so aware of your constant generosity that is keeping us all alive, and your willingness to make sure that we should live heavenly days right here on this earth. Because of that, I have the chutzpah to ask you to help us with this and that, and that's good. Rabbi Levi Yitzhak has a wonderful thing. He says, when you make a bracha, what right have we got to make the bracha that God is going to forgive us? It says, Baruch Ato Hashem, Chanun Hamar Belisloach. You're always forgiving us. How do I know? So he says, there's a child. Child wants an apple. Papa says, no, you're going to get the apple after dinner, not before dinner. And the child says, Baruch Ato Hashem, Baruch. And so what could the father do? He has to give him. So he says, so too, we say the bracha, you have to forgive the one who's forgiving, so God can't make us do a bracha levatola, he has to forgive us. There is that relationship, that family relationship that we have with God that is absent in other religions.
That's true.
Well, let's take a look at some of the other things. Right, how do we sustain a commitment to seeking the presence of God? That's an important one. Let's go and check this out a bit. We do have a sense when we are in connection. We feel it in a way, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That's what dveikut is. And sometimes the dveikut is more manifest and we feel the grace of God surrounding us. Sometimes the dveikut shows in a certain sense of absence and longing. And longing is, if I understand longing from the divine point it means that God is longing for me too when I feel the longing. And so the person who is reciting the Song of Songs and saying, on my bed at night I saw the one whom my heart loves. I sought him and found him not, Al mishkavi baleilot bikashti et shava nafshi bikashti velo matzati. And I have experienced in my life that the times of longing brought me so much closer, sometimes than the times when I felt the kind of relaxed presence of God.
I've experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
This is interesting because, from my perspective, this is one of the ways to bring God in, and we forget so easily.
Well, take a look. One of the problems that I'm trying to address in this entire series is for people to daven during the week. If you don't daven during the week, and there's this one segment, remember when we worked on dawn and dusk,
right?
That these are the special times, the double consciousness of day and night. It is so much easier to pray at that time. And when we do that, then we foster, we nurture the connection that we have with God.
The way I see it, we need to have a practice every day, preferably more than once a day. And the way I see it is, with everything we do, we need to remember God. Otherwise, we drift.
So, when they talk about who is a tzaddik, a tzaddik is the one who makes 100 brachas. He says Amen 90 times. He says 10 kadeshim, right? And is part of a minyan of 10. So you can come up with that. But I think every time a bracha is being made, look, you go to the John. Having experienced what it means to be either having constipation or the other direction, to have diarrhea, and when everything is working and you're saying, thank you, God, it's really working, thank you, that is a bracha that's being made, and you don't make it ostentatiously. You don't go, ta-da-da-da, I've just been to the bathroom, You say it quiet and you wink at God and you say, thank you, it works, Or in the morning when you say, for every breath I thank you, Mm-hmm. So that's why the entrainment, the traditional ritual can bring. Watch, I didn't say it does bring, I said it can bring. So when it is made with consciousness, it works.
Yeah, when it's made with consciousness, rather than I'm fulfilling my obligation.
Pushing it off my shoulder. Can I take a look at the other list? Yeah. Right. I want to say something about how do we sustain the love of God, even the absence of feeling the presence. That's an important one. The longing that I've said, and also there is something that comes with arrow prayers. We talked about this in the series, and it is that moment when we just flip up, as it were, and say, God, you there? Look inside of me, see me. I'm open, I'm transparent to you. That's why I put that little bell in the car that should ring every time I hit a pothole or something like that. Because, yes, hello. And these are the kinds of things that, because everything else we see in front of our eyes, but that has to be done by the kind of conscious repetition and saying, but this is also how reality exists for us. I wanted to say something about meditating Jews and Jewish meditation.
Okay.
Because I've seen that people package things as Jewish meditation, which turns out to be not Jewish meditation, but Buddhist meditation with a little bit of Jewish input, like a Jewish mantra, a chant, or something like that. But it is not that which starts from the Torah saying, know you therefore and put it into your heart.
Right.
Know it and put it in your heart. And Jewish meditation is the stuff that makes us know it and put it in the heart. That's why so much of that series has been going on steering the mind, moving from the ought more into the is, and so on. But let me see, there are a couple of other notes that I made about that. Yeah, something funny. The world, when they think of meditation, they only talk about meditation as if it came from the East. That in the Psalm 19 it says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord," and that the whole business of the Psalms, when I see the heavens, the work of your fingers, and I say, "Who is man?" and so on and so forth. So it's not for reciting these things. That is a guide to points made in contemplation. And that's why it's so important to recognize that. But also, we share a great deal of meditative skills with Christianity.
How so?
Well, this is my story. I was a card-carrying Lubavitcher teaching in New Haven, Connecticut, when I wanted to get some books on psychology. I should be a better teacher. So I came to the library and found a couple of books there on a table that says New Acquisitions. One was called Difficulties in Mental Prayer by Father Eugene Boylan. So, was heißt, I started to say, do the Goyim know for mental prayer? I thought only, even among Jews, only the Chabadnikas, the Lubavitchers knew. The rest of them were always vocal prayer, never hitbonenut, mental prayer. So I picked up the book and I saw he is describing the same troubles that we have in trying to keep the mind straight and the ideas that are popping up and how to deal with all that so that we could then bring this into our heart. From there I went and found out more about Ignatian meditation, and I saw that this is not hours and hours. This is 20 minutes at most, 15 minutes at most, and it makes a real shift. And that, by the way, is the way in which meditation has to go now.
Can you describe that?
Yeah. He says the first thing is the meditation of place. Am I in the presence of God? Okay. What am I in touch with God's will for me and for the world and what I have to do? Do I realize what are the obstacles to fulfilling that? Do I hold this up to God in prayer that the obstacles be removed from me? I see how important my actions will be and what the consequences and the fruits of the action are going to be in the long run. And I see myself as an agent of the living God in what I'm doing. I mean, he has, and there's another standard, that's the standard of evil, the standard of the world. And I want to say, no, this is not my standard. I place myself under this. It's a wonderful thing. And when somebody asked him, Ignatius, what are you going to do when the Pope outlaws your Jesuits? He said, 15 minutes in the oratory is going to be all the same to me. Just let me pray for 15 minutes and I can handle everything. He wasn't saying it won't make a difference. He said it makes a difference. He'll be hurt. His life work will be destroyed. But in 15 minutes, in the presence of God, he can handle that. Mm. And I think this kind of meditation is what we need in our busy lives today, not the long ones. Let's see what are some of the other points there. Yeah. There are some things that have to do with the kind of consciousness that is required. You see, when the people are saying, I'm fulfilling my obligation, I don't need to do all this spirituality that you guys are peddling here, then I will say, yeah, let me ask you a question. Imagine you're tying tzitzis into a talus, and you are not stating that you're doing l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. Will the tzitzis be kosher? If you want to be eating matzah for Pesach, for the first night of Pesach, to be yotze achilat matzah, if the matzah hasn't been baked l'shem matzah's mitzvah, then it's lacking. Even writing a divorce proceeding has to be done lishmo lishma v'l'shem gerushin. Studying Torah, they always say you have to study Torah lishma, which is to say for the sake of the soul, for the sake of the Torah, for the sake of the Shechina. So they all agree that mitzvahs tzrichas kavod, the mitzvahs demand that you should have that kind of intentionality. And that's why I think it's not that they should stop doing what they're doing, but it is to make sure that the track of awareness that they have to have should be present. So let's see if there's anything else. There is one more point that I wasn't able to spend too much time on.
Which one?
That has to do with before we say L'Shem Yichud Kudshe V'Richo Shinte, Hineni Muchanam Zumam, which is saying, I'm doing this for the sake of the Holy One, blessed be, in the divine presence, and behold, I am prepared and present to do this particular holy work. Okay? Now, before you can say it, what do you have to do? And that is the element, not so much of saying, this is what I mean to do, but to give yourself, like people in sports do now, see yourself going through this in the highest possible way in which you can do it. So I'm about to count Sphire. This is now the time of counting Sphire. And I now go into myself and I say, I'm doing this. And I see myself doing it with a melody, and I see myself feeling the calendar of the time, and I see myself on the ladder that is climbing up to God during counting Sphira, and the grace that's coming down during the days coming Sphira, and I taste it almost. And then I start saying the Bracha, then all this falls into the Bracha. And so the rabbis in the Talmud have said, Machshava Tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu Metzarfa L'Maaseh. If you have a good thought, Machshava means more than thought. It means if you are weaving this all together on the level of reason and the level of feeling and the level of intuition and feeling in your body, then when you actually do the thing, it gets connected with that. Right. And that's a very important thing. What else would you want to say to the people? You put in a lot of work to make that go.
I think it's important that we get rid of all concepts of what God is. I think that is a form of avodah zarah that is very dangerous, but very prevalent.
Now, how do you propose that people do that?
Very simple. You ask God, you say, Dear God, look, I need to get rid of my concepts so that I can know you.
You know, I once heard something from Jean Huston that was very helpful to me. She was talking about people's mantras. She was saying, I'm not talking about the mantras that you recite with your mouth, but the mantras that are going on in your head. I am a this, I'm a that, I'm a this, I'm a that. I think this, I think that. I have a whole bunch of these tapes that I'm running.
Right.
There's no way in which you can get rid of them except by taping over them, she said, by coming on with a stronger mantra. And to keep, and that's what I'm saying is part of that meditative thing, to be able to say, Ana Avda de Kudshe B'Richu, I'm a servant of the Holy One, blessed be He. I am a part of living earth. I'm God in this body. All these affirmations that are being made are the ones that make the difference, because they're the new tapes that you run. And out of that, the other ones get pushed away.
Yeah.
So, good people, you have that series. It's not going to be enough if you watch them only once. I know there's curiosity. You want to see new, what have they got to say? But as Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato says in Mesilat Yesharim, I'm not telling you anything that's new. I'm telling you something that you already know, especially you know it in your intuition. But it's very important that you go over that again and again, because otherwise the habitual thing will take over. You'll forget about doing that. So if you can, after you have watched the whole series, once a month take one of those DVDs and watch it again and ask yourself the question, am I applying this and is it working for me? You will see so much blessing coming in for you. And if you have friends that you want to share, let them watch it with you and have conversations. Because greater than what's going on inside of you is when you socialize that meditation, when you share with another person, then the reality, the social reality that you create for yourself is going to, again, overcome the social reality that the culture is putting on you. And you will see how great it is. And as my Rebbe said, when there are two people who serve God talk to each other, there's two good inclinations for good against one inclination for evil, and the inclination for good wins.
This brings to mind Reb Shapira, conscious community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to form conscious communities. They don't have to be frum, but they have to be where people get together and practice and reinforce each other.
That's how it says, the prophet says, Az nidberu yireh Hashem, ish shel re'ehu, then that the people talk to one another.
Yeah.
V'yakshev Hashem, and listen, God listens in, and he writes it into his book, as it were, L'yireh Hashem v'chol shvei shemo. That interests God more than anything else that happens, the dialogue of the devout. Kol tuv, all the blessings to you.